Millionaire cheated while his pregnant wife was decorating the nursery. She sold the house without telling him. Alicia Carter thought marriage to her millionaire husband, Jonathan Carter, was the dream of a lifetime, a dream woven with whispered vows, diamond promises, and the excitement of their first child on the way. But one startling discovery of lipstick on his collar and a suspicious flurry of text messages soon turned her fairy tale into a living nightmare. Betrayal stung like a dagger to the heart, and Alicia found herself standing at the brink of a choice that would alter both their lives forever. Little did Jonathan know that, while he reveled in his secret affair, his pregnant wife was plotting an extraordinary twist he would never see coming. From the outside looking in, Jonathan and Alicia Carter were the sort of couple that graced magazine covers. Both came from modest backgrounds, only to rise to dizzying heights after Jonathan's investment in a groundbreaking startup called Microgreen Technologies paid off fivefold. Their faces popped up at galas alongside big names like Jeff Bezos and Mark Zuckerberg. Their philanthropic efforts landed them on local TV shows, with Alicia championing educational causes and Jonathan cutting ribbons for new libraries. Their lavish estate, nestled in the affluent suburb of Beverly Hills, was a testament to the grandeur of their success. Alicia, a former schoolteacher, had met Jonathan during a fundraising event for underprivileged children. She was there to volunteer, he was there to donate, and sparks flew in a swirl of champagne toasts and philanthropic zeal. The pair married swiftly, their mutual passions and ambitions aligning like cosmic magnets. To outsiders, their relationship radiated unwavering commitment. 6 months into their marriage, Alicia found out she was pregnant. Joy burst through the seams of their once quiet home, and Jonathan took to social media to announce the upcoming addition to the Carter family. Friends, family, and even gossip columnists swooned at this modern-day fairy tale, unaware of the storm silently brewing beneath its polished surface. Jonathan Carter had always been charismatic. His quick mind and charming smile had opened doors from Silicon Valley boardrooms to Hollywood after parties. Yet, as his business empire grew, so did the demands on his time and attention. Late-night conference calls, spontaneous business trips, and secretive deals became a norm, leaving Alicia often alone in their echoing mansion. At first, Alicia dismissed her nagging intuition. She told herself the constant calls from unknown numbers were just business. She reasoned that the strange receipts she found in his coat pockets, designer boutiques she didn't recall visiting, were gifts for her or for clients. Jonathan was, after all, a generous man who prided himself on making a grand impression wherever he went. But as Alicia's belly swelled, a distance also grew between them. Jonathan would leave before she woke up, slip into bed long after she had drifted off, and barely exchange more than a cursory greeting. Whenever Alicia tried to confront him, he deflected with that signature grin and hush-hush references to confidential mergers or discreet investor dealings. Trust between them, once so steadfast, began to fray like a well-worn rope, and Alicia couldn't shake the feeling that something was deeply, irrevocably wrong. One crisp December morning, Alicia awakened to a faint buzzing on Jonathan's phone. He was already gone, an early flight to Seattle for a business meeting, or so he claimed. The phone screen glowed with a text message from a contact listed under a simple V. Curious and admittedly apprehensive. Alicia tried to ignore it. She'd never snooped through her husband's phone before, believing trust was the cornerstone of their marriage. Yet something about that morning, a whisper of dread in her stomach, compelled her to pick up his phone. Her heart hammered in her chest as she swiped the screen. The text read, "Missing you already." Last night was unforgettable. Alicia's mind reeled. She tapped into the message thread with trembling fingers, only to be bombarded by a series of intimate photos and heart-fluttering confessions. Mentions of hidden rendezvous at the luxurious Four Seasons in Santa Barbara, dinners at exclusive restaurants in Malibu, and elaborate gifts, none of which Alicia recognized, solidified her worst fears. Her body felt numb, as if the ground beneath her had dissolved. This was not a passing indiscretion. From the depth of those messages, it seemed like a full-blown affair. The severity of Jonathan's betrayal shook Alicia to her core, leaving her gasping for her next breath. For a moment, Alicia thought she might faint. She clutched at her stomach, feeling the life growing inside her as her tears began to spill uncontrollably. How could Jonathan do this to her, to them, while she was pregnant? The question burned into her mind, a vicious cycle of disbelief and raw heartbreak. She closed the messages and sank to the floor of their bedroom, wrapping her arms around her belly. Their child, the center of her world. How could she protect this innocent being from the impending turmoil? Her first impulse was to call Jonathan, confront him immediately, scream until her rage was heard from one end of the house to the other. But then, a calmer voice within her whispered caution. Alicia needed to be strategic. She needed more information when the affair began, how deeply it ran, who this V was. She recalled nights Jonathan came home smelling of a perfume that she herself never wore. She recalled glimpses of lipstick on his collar in a shade Alicia never used. Each buried suspicion now crystallized. With tears drying on her cheeks, Alicia made a vow she would gather her proof, bide her time, and find a way to make Jonathan regret betraying her and their unborn child. V turned out to be Vanessa Coleman, a high-profile real estate agent in Los Angeles. Alicia discovered this after discreetly checking Jonathan's laptop, finding multiple emails that shared her name, the property listings, and personal travel itineraries that conveniently matched Jonathan's business trips. Vanessa had grown up in the elite circles of LA society, attending the same exclusive parties as the Kardashians, frequently appearing in press photos for glitzy events. Her professional success and social prowess only fueled Alicia's fury. Digging deeper, Alicia found photo after photo of Jonathan and Vanessa, hidden in the recesses of his cloud storage. Shots of them at private beach villas in Cancun, smiling intimately at a candlelit dinner. Pictures from a yacht party in Miami, their bodies close, eyes locked. The more Alicia uncovered, the more violently her heartbreak twisted within her. Her mother, Julia Martinez, had always told her that truth, once found, was powerful and also dangerous. Alicia could feel the weight of this truth gnawing at her. She spent sleepless nights piecing together the timeline of this betrayal, forging a steely resolve. Above all else, Alicia understood she had to stand firm for the sake of her unborn child and reclaim her dignity before Jonathan's deception shattered her life completely. At first, Alicia considered simply leaving Jonathan. She imagined packing her bags, returning to her old life in San Diego, and raising their child independently. But the reality of being financially and emotionally entangled with someone of Jonathan's standing loomed like a mountain. A silent storm raged inside her. She felt anger, sadness, humiliation, and a fierce desire for retribution. One late evening, after pacing the long, marbled corridors of their home, Alicia wandered into the room she planned to transform into the baby's nursery. The bare walls mocked her, empty and waiting for a future she had once believed in wholeheartedly. Alicia sank into the lone rocking chair she had placed there, a yard-sale treasure meant to be refurbished. She ran her hand over her stomach, her breath trembling with mingled heartbreak and determination. For the sake of her child, Alicia needed to fight back. She decided that confrontation alone was too weak a response for such a colossal betrayal. She wanted Jonathan to feel an upheaval in his life so immense that he could never brush it off as a mere indiscretion. So she began to formulate a plan, one that would require patience, cunning, and a willingness to match Jonathan's ruthless streak. Alicia knew she couldn't navigate the murky waters of revenge all by herself. Despite her heartbreak, she had to keep a level head to protect her baby. She reached out to her oldest friend, Heather Dalton, a brilliant attorney with an uncanny knack for unearthing legal loopholes. They'd first met when Alicia taught at an after-school program years ago, and their bond had only grown stronger over time. Over brunch at the Ivy, a place Jonathan often frequented with his business associates, Alicia quietly laid out her story for Heather. She spoke in hushed tones, ensuring prying ears wouldn't overhear. Heather's wide-eyed shock soon morphed into determined support. They began discussing legal safeguards for Alicia and the child, from child support to spousal arrangements. Next, Alicia contacted Philip Romano, a discreet real estate agent with whom she had a passing acquaintance through philanthropic circles. She needed inside knowledge of property transactions and the best way to leverage ownership of their Beverly Hills estate, which was legally in both their names. Philip, sympathetic to her plight, promised absolute confidentiality. The hush-hush planning ignited a spark within Alicia, a sense of empowerment amidst despair. Step by step, she was preparing the groundwork for a retaliation that Jonathan would never see coming. Alicia's plan was both simple in concept and complicated in execution. She intended to sell the Beverly Hills mansion, the very symbol of their perfect life, without Jonathan's knowledge. The idea had first crossed her mind in a moment of fury, but with each new piece of evidence of his betrayal, it solidified into a calculated strategy. She discovered that Jonathan had been inattentive to many of their shared accounts, trusting Alicia to manage household finances. He had also signed specific legal documents that gave her limited power of attorney for certain property matters, an arrangement they had made early in the pregnancy, so Alicia could handle urgent needs while Jonathan traveled. Now, that oversight would cost him dearly. With Heather's legal guidance, Alicia crafted a meticulously detailed approach. They would list the home in a private off-market sale, targeting a small circle of ultra-wealthy buyers who valued discretion. Philip, her ally in real estate, began discreetly contacting potential clients. Alicia's goal was to finalize the sale in secret, ensuring the transaction would be far along before Jonathan even had the faintest clue. It was risky, but Alicia was resolute. She was fueled by heartbreak and the maternal instinct to secure a future for her child, no matter the price. Jonathan remained oblivious to Alicia's hidden machinations. He continued his lavish lifestyle and extracurricular escapades with Vanessa, posting carefully curated images on social media to maintain his devoted husband veneer. Meanwhile, Alicia played the part of a doting, expectant wife at public events, her luminous smile concealing the venom behind it. At charity galas, she held Jonathan's arm for photographs, all while her mind churned with details of property contracts. She engaged in polite banter about the baby's nursery with real estate moguls and celebrities, only to step away moments later and message Philip about potential showings. Every handshake at these events felt like a transaction in itself, a means to expand her network of discreet potential buyers. Behind closed doors, Alicia carefully cleared out her personal belongings from the estate, shipping them to a storage unit registered under a friend's name. The vacant walls in the nursery stood as a stark, secret promise to herself. One day soon, Jonathan would see exactly how it felt to have the most precious thing in his life swept away in an instant, just as he had tried to steal her joy. Their life might have looked idyllic to onlookers, but behind each camera flash, the foundation of their mansion was crumbling under the weight of his betrayal and her quiet, burning vengeance. Alicia's plan seemed to be sailing smoothly, but fate had another twist in store. In her 7th month of pregnancy, she began experiencing severe fatigue, dizzy spells, and occasional pains in her lower back. An appointment with her obstetrician, Dr. Simone Hart, revealed she had developed mild preeclampsia. It wasn't life-threatening yet, but it demanded immediate caution. This medical curveball worried Alicia. She'd been operating with a laser focus on vengeance, but now she had to confront a health risk that could affect both her and her baby. Stress management became critical. Dr. Hart advised bed rest, minimal emotional turmoil, and frequent monitoring. How was Alicia supposed to juggle the sale of the house under these constraints? Determined not to derail her plans, she leaned on Heather even more. Their daily check-ins became a lifeline, with Heather taking on tasks Alicia couldn't manage. Heather arranged property showings, coordinated with Philip, and even handled some negotiations in Alicia's stead. Alicia realized that although her health scare was frightening, it also illustrated the strength of the network of friends who genuinely cared for her. Her child's welfare was paramount, but so too was ensuring they escaped Jonathan's deceit with enough security to start anew. Alicia couldn't entirely halt her appearances at home, or else Jonathan might grow suspicious, so she devised a cunning ruse tied to the nursery. She'd have shipments of baby furniture delivered, ones she never intended to open, and direct them into a locked storage room upstairs. She insisted the nursery's fresh paint fumes bothered her, conveniently explaining why the door remained closed. With her mild preeclampsia as a valid medical excuse, Jonathan hardly questioned her decisions. He was too occupied juggling expansion plans for his main company and his secret trysts with Vanessa. When Jonathan inquired about the progress, Alicia would enthusiastically describe the color palette, soft grays and yellows, and lie about a custom-made crib on backorder from Italy. Then she'd offer a carefully orchestrated sigh about how the painter needed more time because of her health. He rarely pressed further, preferring to keep the conversation light, lest Alicia notice his guilt. Ironically, she allowed him to maintain that safe distance, fueling his ignorance of what was really happening in those sealed-up rooms. In private, Alicia's heart ached at the pretend illusions of a happy nursery. Yet each piece of unopened baby furniture served as a symbolic placeholder for the life she intended to create for herself and her child away from Jonathan's treachery. Interest in the Carter mansion escalated, particularly among wealthy international buyers. One anonymous client, rumored to be a tech billionaire from Hong Kong, made a near-asking price offer. Normally, such negotiations could take months, especially for a property valued at over $20 million. But Philip, informed by Alicia's urgency, moved with uncharacteristic speed and secured a buyer who was willing to close with minimal fuss. This accelerated timeline required cunning legal maneuvering. Heather worked double time, carefully drafting documents for Alicia to sign under her existing power of attorney rights. The timing was precarious. If Jonathan caught wind of the sale before the ink dried, everything could unravel. The tension weighed on Alicia, aggravating her already fragile health. But she pressed forward. The final meeting took place in the boardroom of a discreet law office. Alicia arrived with Heather, her eyes masked behind large sunglasses to hide the strain. The buyer, his identity shielded through shell corporations, was represented by an agent who knew better than to ask invasive questions about Alicia's motives. With each signature Alicia scrawled, she felt a surge of anxious triumph. Soon, the Carter mansion would legally belong to someone else, and Jonathan Carter, multimillionaire tech mogul, remained blissfully unaware. Unbeknownst to Alicia, Vanessa had her own agenda. The high-profile agent was used to closing massive deals and basking in the limelight. While Jonathan was enamored with her, Vanessa considered him a stepping stone, an asset to help her climb even higher in LA's social and financial hierarchy. She was impatient for Jonathan to finalize a divorce and start a new life with her, ideally accompanied by a media splash and lucrative brand partnerships. When Jonathan hesitated, citing timing and Alicia's pregnancy, Vanessa grew tired of secrets. Her threatening texts escalated, demanding he choose between her and his wife. She even hinted at going public with their affair if Jonathan didn't commit fully. This boldness put him on edge. The prospect of a scandal, especially one involving a pregnant wife, could crater his reputation and the future of his tech empire. This tension seeped into Jonathan's behavior. He became more irritable, snapping at Alicia over minor details, and his frequent travel excuses became feeble attempts at covering the increased drama with Vanessa. Ironically, Vanessa's impatience would act as a catalyst for Jonathan to finally face the cracks in his double life, just as Alicia's cunning plan neared its climatic completion. One evening, Jonathan returned home late from a business meeting. Alicia was seated in the living room, feigning interest in a magazine. Jonathan fumbled with his jacket, forgetting that a dinner reservation slip from a high-end restaurant in Malibu was in his pocket. It fell to the floor, and Alicia picked it up before he could react. "Table for two," she said softly, reading the date from earlier that evening. Jonathan's face blanched. He muttered an excuse about entertaining clients, but Alicia's suspicious gaze lingered just long enough to make him sweat. She said nothing further, only offered him a lukewarm smile and set the slip on the coffee table. Then, as if uninterested in his reply, she went upstairs to her bedroom. Jonathan's heart pounded. He knew Alicia was no fool. Had she begun suspecting his affair? In reality, Alicia relished the sight of him squirming. She wanted him on edge, perhaps spooked enough that he'd let his guard down even more. The swirl of guilt in his mind would likely overshadow any faint clues of the imminent property sale. As far as Alicia was concerned, let him panic. The more his mind reeled with fear of discovery, the less he'd ever suspect the real thunderbolt headed his way. With the final buyer secured, paperwork for the mansion's sale advanced at record speed. Alicia felt a mix of exhilaration and dread. Legally, the property was almost out of their hands. Yet every day she had to endure Jonathan's presence, biting back anger at the sight of the man who had so blatantly betrayed her. Heather's updates arrived daily, walking Alicia through the labyrinth of closing procedures. Funds were already in escrow, waiting to be transferred once the last signatures were in place. Alicia had stashed the proceeds into a trust fund under her name, with specific clauses ensuring the future security of her unborn child. It was a cunning arrangement that Heather assured her was watertight. The tension in the Carter household ratcheted up as well. Jonathan's phone calls became more frantic, and Alicia overheard him arguing with Vanessa. Late one night, he was pacing near the pool, talking in hushed, angry tones. Vanessa's demands for a permanent commitment had escalated, and Jonathan sounded cornered, yet he continued to shield Alicia from these details, leaving her to appear as the unsuspecting wife. Little did he know, the wife he believed to be in the dark was orchestrating one of the biggest real estate stings of his life. One night, spurred by Vanessa's ultimatums, Jonathan decided to probe Alicia more directly. He found her in the half-finished nursery. She often sat there to gather her thoughts. The walls were partly painted, and unopened boxes were stacked neatly in one corner. "Alicia," he began in a low tone, "we need to talk." Alicia's pulse quickened, but she forced herself to remain calm. She pivoted in the rocking chair to face him. "Yes," he hesitated, seeming to weigh his words. "You've been distant lately. Is something bothering you? Are you happy?" Alicia almost laughed at his hypocrisy, but she feigned confusion. "What do you mean? I'm pregnant, tired, preparing for our baby. If I'm distant, it's because there's a lot on my mind." Jonathan's shoulders slumped with a mixture of relief and guilt. He pressed on. "Work has been crazy, and I know I haven't been around much. Maybe we can go on a short vacation before the baby arrives." Alicia nodded, her face carefully schooled. "That sounds nice," she lied. Inside, she was marveling at the irony. He believed a small gesture could patch their fractured marriage. She managed a weak smile, letting him believe they were on the verge of reconciliation. In truth, her countdown to freedom had already begun. The day the mansion sold felt surreal. Alicia woke up nauseous, her nerves inflamed with equal parts excitement and dread. She feigned a headache and told Jonathan she needed rest. He left for the office, probably for a meeting or another clandestine rendezvous with Vanessa. Around noon, Heather's phone call came in, announcing the completion of the escrow transfer. The funds were officially in Alicia's specially prepared trust. The Carter mansion, once a symbol of her grand life with Jonathan, was now legally owned by someone else. The only remaining step was to inform Jonathan and watch his world collapse. Alicia remained in bed, hand on her belly, contemplating the future. No matter how the confrontation played out, she knew she and her child would be financially secure. There was a pang of sadness at the memory of the innocent love she once shared with Jonathan. She couldn't help but feel remorse at how their fairy tale had turned into such an ugly reality. Still, her conviction remained stronger than her sorrow. When Jonathan walked through the door that evening, Alicia would drop the bombshell that his beloved estate, the one he flaunted to the world as evidence of his success, was no longer his to claim. Jonathan arrived home late, as usual. He found Alicia in the living room, staring at a single envelope on the glass coffee table. Something about her posture, the rigid, unyielding way she sat, sent a bolt of anxiety through him. "Alicia?" he asked cautiously. She gestured for him to take a seat. "There's something you need to know." Jonathan looked at the envelope, a chill slithering down his spine. He tore it open. Inside were the finalized documents of the house sale, the new title, the signature pages, the date stamp, everything. For a moment, he didn't comprehend what he was seeing. This can't be real," he whispered, flipping through each page in confusion. "We didn't list the house." Alicia's voice was cold. "I did, and as of today, it belongs to someone else." Jonathan's eyes widened in panic. "How? Why?" His voice cracked. Alicia's composure wavered only slightly, tears brimming as she thought of the betrayal that had led them here. She steadied herself. "You lied to me, cheated on me, betrayed me while I was carrying your child, and you thought I'd sit idle?" With that, she stood, walking away, leaving Jonathan stunned and reeling, the damning documents clutched in his trembling hands. Alicia's heart hammered in her chest as she climbed the stairs. She heard Jonathan following, his voice roar with anger and desperation. "Stop! Alicia, come back!" He caught her by the arm in the hallway, forcing her to face him. "How dare you do this?" he roared. "We could have worked things out." Alicia yanked her arm away. "Worked things out? While you're in another woman's bed, you think I am a fool?" His face contorted with guilt and indignation. "I never meant to hurt you. You had no right to sell our home behind my back." "No right?" Alicia hissed. "I had every right. You gave me power of attorney, remember? You were too busy with your mistress to notice what was happening under your own roof." Jonathan tried to speak, but words failed him. His once unshakable confidence dissolved into a frantic desperation. The shock of losing the mansion, a cornerstone of his empire, hit him like a sledgehammer. In the midst of that heated exchange, Alicia's baby kicked. She pressed a hand to her belly, reminding herself why she was doing all this. For the child's future, and though her lips trembled with rage, she felt a strange sense of liberation, as though stepping out from a prison she never knew she inhabited. Just as the tension in the hallway reached a fever pitch, the sound of heels clicking on the marble floor echoed through the foyer. Alicia froze, her eyes darting downstairs. Vanessa Coleman walked in, bold as daylight, wearing a tight-fitting designer dress and an air of brazen confidence. Jonathan turned, shock etched across his face. "Vanessa, what are you doing here?" She glanced at Alicia with mild disdain before addressing Jonathan. "You weren't picking up your phone. I needed to speak to you in person." Alicia fought a wave of nausea at the sight of the woman who had wormed her way into her marriage. Vanessa seemed almost bored, as if stepping into a trifling domestic drama rather than the meltdown of two people's lives. Vanessa's eyes flickered from the stack of legal documents on the coffee table to Alicia's pained yet defiant expression. "What's going on?" she demanded, her tone laced with irritation. Alicia spoke first, her voice cool. "I just sold the house, and now I suggest you both find somewhere else to carry on your affair." Vanessa's jaw dropped in disbelief, and a furious Jonathan began stammering explanations. The full brunt of the situation seemed to crash over them all at once, like a tidal wave swallowing any notion of civility. Vanessa's meticulously made-up face twisted in outrage. "You sold the house?" "You can't do that," Alicia smirked. "Actually, I can. I did. And before you start citing legal jargon, I suggest you brush up on contract law." Jonathan tried to salvage the situation, stepping toward Vanessa. "Let's calm down. We can figure this out." Vanessa's eyes flickered angrily. "Don't patronize me. You told me you were going to leave her, that you'd secure everything so we could be together." She swept her gaze around the mansion. "Now she's telling me the place isn't even yours anymore. You lied." Alicia responded with a quiet fury. "He's quite good at lying. I found that out the hard way." Vanessa, enraged, turned on Jonathan. "Are you bankrupt now? Is that what this means?" "Because I'm not sticking around for a man who can't keep a roof over my head." Jonathan's voice thundered through the corridors. "Stop it, both of you." But the power dynamic had shifted irrevocably. Alicia, with her unborn child and the knowledge that she had bested him, stood tall. Vanessa, sensing the diminishing returns of this fiasco, threatened to expose Jonathan's affair to the tabloids if he didn't fix the situation immediately. But Alicia merely watched, her heart cold as the chaos unfolded around her. The hours that followed blurred into a storm of accusations and frantic phone calls. Jonathan tried calling his lawyers, but they confirmed that, legally, the sale was ironclad. Alicia's careful planning had left no loose ends. Vanessa stomped out in disgust, leaving Jonathan alone to confront his wife. In a desperate bid, he begged Alicia to reconsider. "We can talk to the buyer, pay a penalty, anything to reverse this." "Please, Alicia, don't do this." Alicia felt the baby move within her, the physical reminder of her new priority. She shook her head. "You never considered my feelings, my health, our child, when you started cheating. You don't get to plead with me now." His eyes pleaded for a second chance. "I'm sorry, Alicia, I made a mistake." "I'll end it with Vanessa. The first swear. Let me make this right." But she saw through the quiver in his voice. This wasn't love. This was panic. She brushed past him, her voice devoid of sympathy. "It's too late. This house is gone, and so is the life we once had. You betrayed me, and there's no undoing that." Alicia disappeared upstairs, leaving Jonathan in a grand living room that was no longer his own. In the days that followed, the new owner's representatives arrived to inspect the property. Jonathan was forced to face the reality that he no longer had a legitimate claim to the house, and any illusions that Alicia would change her mind evaporated. The media caught wind of tension in the Carter household, spurred by cryptic social media posts from Vanessa hinting at big betrayals and scandalous secrets. While tabloids speculated, Alicia maintained her stoic silence. She moved temporarily into a penthouse suite at the Beverly Wilshire, financed by the trust set up from the property's sale. Jonathan scrambled to find his footing, renting an upscale apartment downtown. He struggled to keep his affair under wraps, but word eventually leaked, and business investors began to question his stability. The polished veneer of Jonathan Carter, whiz-kid entrepreneur, loving husband, soon-to-be father, started to tarnish. Vanessa, sensing that Jonathan was no longer the golden ticket she hoped for, began distancing herself. She even posted selfies with a different wealthy friend, fueling rumors that she had left Jonathan behind. In short order, Jonathan found himself alone, with no wife, no mistress, and no mansion to parade as a symbol of his success. Ensconced in the plush comfort of her penthouse suite, Alicia took a rare moment to reflect on what she had done. In a matter of weeks, she had turned her life upside down, sold the very home she had once dreamed would be filled with children's laughter. She felt a strange mixture of regret and relief. Yes, she had triumphed in a sense, ensuring financial security for her child, but her heart still ached, haunted by the vestiges of a once promising love. Alicia spent her days attending doctor's appointments, focusing on stabilizing her blood pressure and preparing for the final stage of her pregnancy. She also began seeing a therapist, Dr. Miriam Johnson, specializing in postpartum mental health. The emotional scars Jonathan left ran deep. Alicia wanted to ensure she was strong enough for the baby's arrival. Under Dr. Johnson's guidance, Alicia wrote out her feelings in a journal. She recounted how her fairy tale marriage descended into betrayal and how she exacted a measure of justice by selling the house. While some entries were filled with bitterness, others were tinged with nostalgia and the faintest hope for a better future. Through it all, she clung to one truth. She was no longer a victim in Jonathan's story. She was forging her own. 2 weeks later, Jonathan requested a meeting. Despite her anger, Alicia agreed, primarily for the sake of their unborn child. They met at the private lounge of the Four Seasons, a setting that reeked of painful irony. But Alicia held her head high, determined not to show any vulnerability. Jonathan appeared haggard, dark circles under his eyes. "Thank you for agreeing to see me," he began softly. "I know you hate me right now, and I can't blame you." Alicia stiffened, waiting for him to get to the point. He cleared his throat. "I want to be part of our child's life. I know what I did was unforgivable, but I'm still the father. I'm prepared to agree to any terms: child support, visitation, just please don't shut me out." Alicia considered his words. Despite her fury, she understood the importance of a father figure. But she also knew trust couldn't be rebuilt overnight. "We'll discuss details through our lawyers. I won't keep you from the baby, but you need to understand that we're through as a couple." He nodded, tears in his eyes. I realize that. I'm sorry, Alicia." Alicia offered a curt nod and stood to leave. She felt no triumph, only a somber acceptance that certain chapters of her life had closed, never to reopen. A month later, Alicia went into labor earlier than expected. Rushed to Cedars Sinai Medical Center, she endured a tumultuous day of contractions. Heather, her ever-loyal friend, stood by her side. Jonathan, notified by the hospital staff, arrived shortly after, pacing in the waiting room with anxiety etched into every line of his face. Despite her anger and heartbreak, Alicia reluctantly allowed Jonathan into the delivery room, if only to let him witness the miracle he had nearly tossed away. Their son, Gabriel James Carter, arrived amidst tears, pain, and a fleeting sense of unity. For a brief, fragile moment, the new parents locked eyes over their baby's cries. Life had shattered between them, but in that instant, they both felt the weight of something bigger than their betrayals: a new life, innocent and full of potential. Jonathan wept, overcome by emotions he could barely express. Alicia, exhausted and trembling, held baby Gabriel in her arms, tears streaking her face as she whispered a silent promise to protect him. Yet, even as they formed a tentative circle around this newborn child, the reality loomed. No miracle could erase Jonathan's betrayal or Alicia's radical response. They had reached a new beginning, but not necessarily a reconciliation. In the weeks after Gabriel's birth, a delicate dance of co-parenting began. Alicia remained at the penthouse, dedicating her days to nursing and bonding with her newborn son. Jonathan visited regularly, though always by prearranged schedule and under Alicia's careful watch. He brought diapers, formula, and expensive baby gadgets, as if trying to buy forgiveness through lavish gifts. Each visit was a mixture of tenderness and tension. Alicia's heart softened at the sight, but not enough to forget the betrayal. Meanwhile, attorneys hammered out formal custody arrangements and child support agreements. Heather ensured Alicia got a generous settlement, given Jonathan's wealth. Slowly, Alicia and Jonathan established a semblance of civility for the sake of their son. And though the memory of the sold mansion hung like a ghost between them, Alicia recognized that her priority had shifted. Retaliation had been her initial goal, but now she focused on forging a stable future for Gabriel. With Gabriel's arrival, Alicia felt a renewed sense of purpose. She used a portion of the money from the mansion's sale to invest in a children's education foundation, picking up the philanthropic torch she had once carried. Through community events and partnerships, she began shaping a new identity, no longer just the scorned wife of a millionaire, but a dedicated mother and advocate for children's causes. She also hired a therapist to work specifically with both her and Jonathan on co-parenting strategies. Jonathan participated, driven by guilt and genuine paternal instinct. In time, Alicia found a modest but beautiful home in Brentwood. It wasn't as grand as the Beverly Hills estate, but it was hers, purchased independently with the trust money. She decorated Gabriel's nursery with the furniture she had once stored away, finally unboxing the crib from Italy, and the soft pastel decorations she had once dreamed about. Standing in the newly finished nursery, Alicia felt an odd sense of closure. In the hush of that room, she realized something quietly extraordinary. She'd regained control of her story, and the next chapters were entirely in her hands. Several months passed. Gabriel was now a giggling infant, and Alicia's life found a new rhythm. Then, in an unexpected twist of fate, Alicia ran into Vanessa Coleman at a coffee shop near Wilshire Boulevard. Vanessa, sporting dark sunglasses, was in line ahead of her. The moment their eyes met, tension sparkled in the air. Vanessa shifted uncomfortably. "Alicia," she said, forcing a polite nod. The memory of their last encounter, where Alicia had effectively dismantled Vanessa's illusions of a cushy life with Jonathan, was still raw. Alicia's first instinct was to walk away. But curiosity bubbled up. "Vanessa," she returned coolly. "How are you?" Vanessa pursed her lips, then shrugged. "Fine. Life moves on. Yours?" Alicia glanced at Gabriel, snoozing in his stroller, and smiled. Better than ever. A brief silence passed. Alicia almost felt sorry for Vanessa. She had lost a chance at the lavish life she'd pursued, and now stood in a mundane coffee line like everyone else. Vanessa's gaze lingered on Gabriel, perhaps realizing the gravity of what had been lost in her pursuit of a married man. For a fleeting second, Alicia felt empathy for the woman who had partially caused her heartbreak, but she couldn't summon any regret for how things turned out. After all, Alicia had found strength in the wreckage. Time has a remarkable way of quietly mending wounds and unveiling clarity. For Alicia, each day was a subtle tapestry of healing, woven between her dedication to Gabriel and her growing commitment to the educational foundation she had established. The once shattered visions of her marriage took on a softer hue as she funneled her energy into her new home in Brentwood, a cozy, sunlit house surrounded by leafy, green trees. Far from the opulence of Beverly Hills, this place suited her newfound desire for peace and authenticity. When she wasn't rocking Gabriel to sleep in the lovingly decorated nursery, Alicia devoted her hours to the learning center she had set up for underserved children. Located in a vibrant neighborhood in Los Angeles, the center stood as a testament to her determination. It offered free after-school programs, library access, and a mentorship initiative that paired struggling students with volunteer tutors. Alicia's background in teaching allowed her to shape these programs with a passionate, personal touch. She handpicked staff and volunteers who genuinely cared, creating a warm and supportive environment for families who otherwise might slip through the cracks of a hectic city. Meanwhile, Jonathan's visits were scheduled but civil. He arrived with a new humility each time he saw his son. No longer the brash entrepreneur who once believed everything was within his grasp, he now appeared more thoughtful, more subdued. He still lived in a stylish downtown apartment. Money was never an issue, but the scale of his life had shrunk considerably. Gone were the extravagant parties and constant social media updates. In their place stood more modest efforts at rebuilding his image, one philanthropic gesture at a time. Co-parenting remained a delicate balancing act, one that demanded constant effort and mutual respect. On neutral ground, like the waiting room of Gabriel's pediatrician or a bench at the nearby park, Alicia and Jonathan managed cordial conversation about diaper brands and Gabriel's milestones. Jonathan, determined not to repeat his past mistakes, made a genuine effort to be present in his son's daily life. Although Alicia often felt the weight of lingering anger, she allowed Gabriel the chance to bond with his father. Gradually, the sting of betrayal eased enough for Alicia to acknowledge that Jonathan's love for their child was real, even if his love for her had been flawed. Their social circle, once filled with people who flocked to Jonathan's success, had reconfigured. Some friends withdrew when the scandal broke, wary of the drama. Others, like Alicia's closest confidantes, stood firmly by her side, organizing baby showers, bringing meals in the early days of Gabriel's birth, and cheering her on when she secured her own home. Heather, in particular, remained Alicia's rock. In quieter moments, over cups of herbal tea, Heather would remind Alicia that her strength and resolve had not only changed her own life, but inspired others. Alicia occasionally caught glimpses of her old life in newspaper articles or trending social media posts. She saw pictures of the Beverly Hills mansion under renovation by the new owner, a billionaire known for flipping luxurious properties. Rather than feeling regret, Alicia felt an odd mix of nostalgia and relief. She sometimes remembered wandering that mansion's endless hallways, imagining a bright future with Jonathan, only to recall the overwhelming loneliness that had come to inhabit those rooms. Letting go of that gilded cage, no matter how painful, had ultimately set her free. In the rare moments of stillness, while Gabriel napped on her shoulder, Alicia allowed herself to reflect on the whirlwind of events. The heartbreak still throbbed in certain memories, especially when she thought of Jonathan's affair and the messages she had uncovered. Yet, as she gently rocked her son, she found herself surprisingly thankful that life had forced her to stand up for herself and for him. Her soul had been tested and shaped, growing stronger in the face of betrayal. Surrounded by the gentle hum of her new life, Alicia knew the story wasn't tied up in a neat bow. There would be more trials, teething pains, custody disagreements, and emotional hurdles, but she felt ready for them. What mattered was that she had navigated the worst of the storm, emerging with the self-respect and independence she had once believed lost. Above all, she had Gabriel, whose very existence reminded her every day that love can flourish even in the rubble of shattered illusions. As the late afternoon sunlight spilled through the windows of her Brentwood living room, Alicia gazed around with quiet gratitude. She had walked through fire, losing her home, her marriage, and the illusions she clung to, but found something infinitely more valuable on the other side, her voice. And with that voice, she was determined to guide Gabriel into a world where integrity, compassion, and self-worth shone brighter than any chandelier could. So she moved forward one step, one breath, one lullaby at a time, grateful for her second chance at happiness, certain that the future held promise not only for her, but for every child she hoped to uplift along the way. Alicia Carter's journey shows how life's darkest betrayals can spark the fiercest fires of transformation. She could have collapsed under the weight of betrayal, but instead she wielded her pain to forge a safer, brighter future for herself and her son. Jonathan Carter's wealth and arrogance nearly destroyed them both, yet fate and Alicia's unwavering determination rewrote the ending. Selling the mansion wasn't simply an act of vengeance, it was Alicia's declaration of independence. Through heartbreak, she found resilience. Through betrayal, she reclaimed power. If this story gripped your heart, stirred your emotions, and reminded you of the strength we all possess within, help it reach others who might need inspiration. Like, share, and subscribe to this channel for more gripping real-life drama stories. Together, we can explore the power of courage, the triumph of justice, and the unbreakable bond between a parent and child. Let Alicia's story be a beacon of hope for anyone feeling trapped in betrayal.